The aspect I would like to talk about is around the aspects of leadership, interpersonal, intercultural skills and competencies. So you will have a chance these days to really try out, find out, to explore, to share with others. So therefore I would like to go into one aspect which is called the organization of the social technical system. Some of you know it already from the programs. But maybe it's also helpful to remind us again what an organization can be. But before I start showing you the slide, what do you think if you think of an organization? What comes up in your mind first? Yes?
A lot of individual potentials.
A lot of individual potentials.
Hierarchies.
Hierarchies.
Social interaction. Social interaction.
Social interaction. Yes. There was
A lot of subsystems.
a lot of subsystems.
Group dynamics.
Group dynamics. Yes.
Hidden rules.
Hidden rules. Hidden rules.
Relationships and dependencies.
Relationships and dependency. Yes.
Informal networks.
Informal networks.
Communication.
Communication.
Power.
Power.
Changes.
Changes. Do you mean power changes or changes?
Those directions.
Both. That's right. Yes. Hello. Good morning. Welcome. Yes. You see a lot of aspects. Let's check where these aspects can belong to. The social technical system approach was originally created by researchers of the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations in London. So the research goes back to the 50s by A.K. Rice, by Trist in India. They went to these textile mills and explored what happens if you change light, if you change space, etc. So what happens if you change these technical subsystems, means the structural subsystems like tools, the task itself, the primary task of an organization or of a team. And they also discovered that there is something like a social subsystem. This normally we know, we always know. As you know, we say there are hard factors and soft factors, but most of the time this is seen a little bit too short-sighted, because the key is not only that you have two subsystems which interrelate, which affect each other, but if you want to optimize an organization, you have to focus on both subsystems jointly at the same time. This is the key. Normally they hire institutions or consultants for this part, and then for this part they hire different ones. In the case of the Boston Consultings or E.T. Kearns or whatever. But the key aspect is, as I said, just that belong together. And then you have, of course, outcomes of both aspects. You can measure both aspects. How can you measure this part? In terms of how it changes, if it's helpful or not. What would you say? The social subsystem.
You could do a survey, for instance.
Survey, absolutely. We start a lot of projects by just getting the survey on the satisfaction survey of employees. How are you satisfied with your work, with your leaders, etc., etc.? How are you committed to the company, etc.? And they do it not just because they want to be nice to the individuals, to the workers, to the associates, because they're very much also interested in this financial part, etc. Of course, because they really belong to each other. You can also show it like this. Here we started to say, okay, organizations have social aspects. Here it's another, and these. And if you look at this, you don't really understand what happened, where and why. Did we have these changes at that point? What happens if you change power? If you look at the structure, what happens if you change the structure? If you go from a more business structure to a more regional structure? If you divide the power, or if you allocate the power for divisional power to the regions? So what happens if the countries in the regions like China, Turkey, America, etc. start becoming very strong? So this has to do with strategy. You the goal, then you change the strategy. But then suddenly you realize, what about the decision-making process? This belongs to the social subsystem. Okay? What about the style of leadership? What kind of leadership do I need? Before, maybe it was rather similar, because let's say it's a European headquarter and you have a very similar value system, leadership style. You say it's always cooperative, you have to involve the people, etc. But what happens if you go for a regional part? Do you lead people in China or in Turkey or in America the same way? Can you do it or not? Question mark, I don't know. But you can find out. So this is also somehow the social and the structural subsystem, as you can see. So it has an effect. If you want to become international, suddenly you have to see what culture do I need? If you want to become international, intercultural, it's not easy. If you have a very strong German company culture, we had once an assignment by Davis, it doesn't exist anymore. It was a part of Daimler Chrysler, at that time Daimler. So they had the strategy, you want to become more international. People has to go out. But people didn't want to go out, because the corporate culture was not that international at that time, 20 years ago. And we tried to understand and to help them to become more intercultural, by opening up for other cultures, by going as an expat out, but the expats didn't want to go out because they said, what happens when I come back? Will I get the same position or not? So all these aspects were not clarified. But these are aspects of the structural factors, the HR policy, for example. If you don't look at your HR policy at the same time by changing your culture, intercultural aspect, you will not be successful. That's the message. By the way, this we created with the top manager, with the client, who had a lot of factories around the world. Most of his factories were around here. Here you have the technical subsystem, the leaders, the managers, and the consultants they hired were very much concentrated on these facts and figures. And his dilemma was, how can I get my factories up here? That my factory directors really are also concerned with the aspects of the social subsystem. Like culture, like developing people, leaders developing leaders, etc. Because if you take the time, you need to bring these companies up here if you want to really survive in this dynamic world, in this changing world. And if you just focus short or mid-term on numbers, I know managers have to do this, of course, but top managers are also looking, and I know from industrial companies, where they got a job, let's say in India or somewhere else, in Thailand, and they said, you have to go. If you don't go, you have to go out. Because you don't develop your people. So we give you a chance in this country. It's like a punishment, but at the end it's the last chance. Okay? So I will show you later on what it means, how to go here, because by coaching, by training, you can try to bring your managers up here. That's what they do, or with organizational development. But if you are too soft, if you're just looking on the bright side of the enterprise, it doesn't work at all. I know an industrial company who closed a factory in America, although this company was extremely team-oriented. They really were running around with t-shirts like we are, whatever. But at the end they had to close it, because they couldn't really catch up with the financial part, with the bottom line. It was always in danger. So it's not enough to be just here. Good leaders have to have good results. And consultants and coachings, we have a mixed audience here, have to help them. And if you can't help a leader to come from here to here, to this direction, then you have to quit your assignment at the end. Okay, so it's not just to have positive aspects. So let's look a little bit on the psychodynamic part. You know this of Edgar Stein, the culture part. So if you talk about culture, there are always at least 3 dimensions. So what we can see, what we perceive, and what we have to discover, some basic assumptions, very deep underlying aspects, beliefs, mental models about time, about life, you know. And if you put the religious aspect, etc., into it, then it becomes very deep. All these deep values, future, assumption, what you can perceive, what you can try to understand is behavior, habits, ritual, customs. The risk-taking, for example, or aspect. Or you can analyze their policies, their structures, how they treat people, etc. You can, but to go deeper, you have to really explore. That's what, by the way, what we want to try to understand also these days. To go a little bit deeper. So, in order to bring the company up here, or the unit, or the organization, or if the business psychology students want to help later on as HR functions, etc., then you need some competencies. And we have here Mintzberg and Goslin. Jonathan Goslin, by the way, his father was very much related to the Tavistock tradition, to group relations as well. He himself as well. He was, or is still the director of the Center for Leadership Studies at the University of Exeter. Elliot knows him as well. You know Jonathan, of course. And Mintzberg, Henry Mintzberg, is a Canadian professor, lecturer in Canada, in McGill University. And he wrote a lot about leadership, management, organization. It's one of our management gurus, so to say. They sat together and they tried to understand the difference between management and leadership. You know, this was always discussed, started by Philip Kotler in the 90s, by saying, although he didn't say this, he didn't say we have leaders and we have managers. That's why the people made out of it later on. He just said you need both aspects in teams or as a leader. You need to have leadership capabilities, like creating visions, making people committed to what you do with them, to the primary task, for example, to really understand, to engage people, to take them with you, to have a lot of followers, so to say. Management means, of course, as the word says, to have a safe, structured process, ongoing process without a stop. This is management. Making money always. It's not bad or good. It's just a differentiation. What they said, it's okay, but it's not enough to think like this. As a leader, by the way, this is Jonathan and this is Henry, you need these 5 mindsets. First one is the reflective mindset. Reflective means you have to try out, to check something, and if you realize I have to change my habit, my understanding or whatever, my view, then you have to adjust your behavior. Hallo, kannst du mich halten? Herzlich willkommen. Okay, this is the reflective mindset. You need this. This is the key. And the other one is the analytical mindset. So for this, you need a deeper understanding, not only on the surface. Of course, you have to analyze numbers, figures, etc. as well, but also what happens in your business, what happens in your work environment, in your field as well. And this goes to this worldly mindset, they call it. This is something where you have to understand and be open to other cultures, to work with other cultures, and to take out of learnings around it. And then the collaborative mindset means working and helping people to connect, to network, to work, to collaborate, to cooperate. This is also key as a leader, as a manager. And of course, here comes it together. They say here the action mindset where you have the leadership and the management aspect, because management also means planning actions, really implementing actions, reviewing actions, and making success out of it. So here you can see they very much concentrate on the mindset. And I hope that we can help you to open up your mindset in these days. Try it, try out to say, if you are very much controlling all the time in your life, try to let it go a little bit in these days. If you are the other way around, you can try to manage a group and then see what happens. If they follow or not, you will see. And what you have to make sure that they follow you. This is the laboratory, that's why we call it laboratory. Now, the aspect of strategic thinking, if I look at this, I will not go through all of it. I just want to point out, this is by Liedtke. It's a very interesting person, researcher, who researched the difference between strategic thinking and strategic planning. The higher you go up in the hierarchy, of course, the more you have to think in terms of strategy. Not only planning or thinking, but strategy. You have to think strategically. And I know we have clients who are sent out and their assignments are not postponed because the owners say he doesn't think strategically in his function. Means globally, means concentrated to the future, means connected, the big picture, the architecture, etc. Here you can see the highlights and then the differences. What I want to point out is these aspects of all managers understand the larger system. It's interesting that the meaning of system comes out here. The connection between their roles and the functioning of that system, as well as the interdependence between the various roles that comprise the system. It could be one of the descriptions of a group relations conference, by the way. It is not totally covered, but in general, major. So what I want to say is, what you will do these days is also to go into also somehow opening and strategic thinking, not only acting and doing something, but also doing why you do it and what is the thinking behind it, and the unconscious dynamics behind it. By the way, the hidden rules, as you said, goes also to this direction of this unconscious dynamics. The hidden rules. There was a book which was called Die heimlichen Spielregeln in Organisationen from ADL, Arthur D. Little wrote it, The Hidden Rules of an Organization, or something like this. It was a very interesting book in the 90s. Let's talk a little bit about leadership. By the way, by leadership, I don't mean just leading organizations, leading people, but also leading customers, leading processes, and leading yourself. That's what I mean. Leading yourself. That's what we are working in these days. Okay? So, what happens? If you are a leader, manager, of course, you are in this field. The expectations, it can happen here as well. The expectations by group members and the expectations of us as staff and primary tasks and roles, etc. And then suddenly you feel, by taking up maybe a leading role in one of the subsystems, you suddenly realize, wow, this pressure. And then if you take the inside also, the pressure from inside, your inner pictures, so you can understand the complexity. This I like very much. I don't know who said this, but in order to be a leader, you must have followers. You can also try it out this week. Okay? So by seeing what idea you have, if you are able to really bring through your idea, or if you can create a group where you want to discuss something very important for you, in intercultural senses, etc. This is a very big word, sentence, but it can be broken down into really the aspects. So just to remind us, what are we influencing by leading? We influence the interpretation, how we see the world, how we see something what happens, the external events, or the internal groups and organizations. Then the choice we influence, we motivate. By the way, power, influence, so it's very related to each other. So without power, it's difficult to influence. I'm not talking about manipulation. Manipulation is something different. But influence. You have to have an influence. You have to make a difference when you lead, when you work with the group. The trust or the motivation, of course, it's a discussion if you can motivate or not. I say you can't not motivate people in that sense, but you can demotivate, or you can really destroy their motivation. This is something which is discussed very intensely, if you can motivate or not. Because if you motivate someone for something and the inner motivation is not there, it will not long last. So it will not be a long-lasting motivation. It would be very short term. Of course, the organization of activities, the development of members and skills and their confidence. By the way, if you don't develop yourself, so how can you develop people? So how can you be a good leader? It's not possible. That's the dilemma of a lot of managers and leaders. They don't work on themselves. They are not very reflective from time to time, but they have a key role developing managers. And it's even more difficult to develop managers than to develop associates. You also influence the sharing, of course, the learning and the sharing, and to get the support from outside. This is the typical managerial function or process. Okay? Very typical. Targets, planning, deciding, realizing. This is the management circle, so to say. This is the challenge. How to make organizational success. How to create organizational success. And here you can see it's only possible by really influencing the climate. I don't say the culture, but the climate. And long-term, mid-term, the culture, of course. So this is a very important algorithm, or how you want to call it, connection. Beside the management circle, as we had planning, deciding, etc., we have more this on the social, relating to the social subsystem. So really inspiring, creating direction, giving orientation. Maybe you will lose also orientation these days. So well, why the hell am I here? Why did they put it to the intranet? Why is it on the management pool? Why the hell is our university cooperating with this institution and doing these sessions? So all these kind of things. Then sometimes maybe you look to the staff, to us, and to say, will they give me direction or not? But the question is also, do I have my own direction in myself as well? Drive organization alignment, organization vitality, execute with excellence, and then, of course, as I said, results. It's also important. Maybe broken down to us, what we do here is the question of primary task. In whatever you do, we have a primary task of, you will see later, of orglab, of the subsystem. The question is always, why do we do what we do? What is the primary task? It's not just sitting around. There is an idea behind it. Therefore, it's also, you will see part of us, but also always looking at it, what is it? This is John Adair, a Brit, from Britain. A very popular one, maybe he wrote most books about leadership. And now he is a knight, so like a queen, you say knight. He's also cooperating with us. And here's a very simple concept of leadership management. He says, you have to manage and lead the task and achieve the task. You have to work with the team and individuals. If you take this as an important leadership task, by the way, if you go somewhere, if you have an internal or external interview, it's always helpful to, if you have some concepts in mind of leadership, management, etc. Sometimes HR people ask this. How do you lead? What is your concept? What is your inner picture of leadership or management? What do you follow? And if you can say one or two or so, maybe not too much, then say, which one is it now? So it can be helpful to say, yes, I follow. I'm trying to achieve the task. I look at my team and, of course, the individuals in the team. And here, we can work a lot on this competence of also being in teams, working with teams, looking what happens between teams, etc., by working on the primary task, as well as being you yourself as an individual as well, and the different individuals in the subsystems. This is something which comes from Tuckman. I'm not sure, I think it's Tannenbaum. I think I wrote it wrong. Tuckman is the team leader. This is from Tannenbaum. And it is about leadership authority. Means, I like the word authority because we will work very much here. The question is, how much do you take as a member the freedom of authority, to take the authority to work out, to try out something?
One question, what is for you the difference about authority and power?
Good question. I hesitate because it's one of the key aspects of this week. What is the difference of authority and power? The question is, if you can have power without authority, maybe there is something as an inner authority. Maybe there is an issue of, do I authorize myself to do something? Am I authorized by a group? Gesundheit, to take the power. So a lot of aspects we can explore. But I'm sure without authority, if you look around the world, you can take in the Krim. You can take in the east part of Ukraine, but is it really authorized? And by whom? You have power to do it, right? But the international community didn't authorize it. It's a really critical point. It's more on a bigger, larger societal level, but we can break it down as well. I once remember when I was in Leicester, 1990, I was in a group of female members and they sent me out to a group meeting, intergroup meeting, and I was the delegate. I went there, but they said, please come back 10 minutes before and then tell us what happened. I didn't. And someone came and said, you are not the leader anymore, please come back. I said, why? Because they took away my authorization. Bad luck, so I had to go back. I was so proud. Any questions before I show you more? I hope you have still some power to listen to the theoretical academic lecture. Is it interesting? Does it fit? So leadership, management, power authorization. By the way, by leading, you have always an organization in the mind, or by consulting, by coaching. So the question is always, what kind of organization in the mind do I have? I showed you mine, social technical system. Because if I have this in my mind as an organization, then I always work like this. It's like having having my glasses, you know. So what kind of glasses do you have? You can find out this for you. How do I see organizations? Do I think organization is a family? Do I think organization is a prison? An orglab is now a prison? What is it? Or is it a play garden? Is it military? I once consulted in Newbern leaders and coached them. The interesting part was the top managers, the American ones, were all former captain of the Marines, because there was a very big location there. And you can imagine the organization in the mind was military. Hierarchy, a very strong hierarchy. Whatever they did, they always thought about their background in the organization in the mind, consciously or most of the time unconsciously. And interestingly, they always hired for the middle and the lower management levels also lower captains, I don't know the ranks, but lower ranked Marines. Also about trust, etc. Of course, I can trust these people because I know they were. What's this? This is about also the team in the mind. What is the team in the mind? What kind of team do we have in the mind? We are talking about the team as a social system. Or maybe, what does it mean? You can find out and try out this week. Here you have again this structural factors and the social factors, the psychodynamic factors. And this is, if you really balance both and if you can work on all these levels, you can have this output. You can influence the team and organizational performance to reach the primary task or to work on the primary task. Let's say it this way. You can increase quality of leadership. Or, as you said, the employee satisfaction. For example, if you are able to create a culture of openness, of trust, if you have fear in the culture, you will not be very successful in terms of creativity, of course. So there is always a link. And, of course, at the end, productivity. Maybe you will struggle what it means, the productivity in this conference. So what is it? How are we successful? What do I have to do? I can remind you on the primary task we will later work on. Also on the deepness of the reflections, etc. The deeper we can do it, the more self-reflective we are working as an individual and as a subsystem, the more productive you can be in terms of learning. By the way, yes, I will show it later. You know this. By the way, I found out in my research, it's not just by Schulz von Thun, this communication concept we know very much in Germany. It goes back to really into the 60s, 50s, 60s. It was the sender and receiver communication aspect. It's very complex. You can say, of course, one is communicating a message to the recipient, there is self-revelation in it, in one sentence. There is this information, the appeal part, the relationship part between them, and you just find it out by really working with feedback process, etc. This sounds very, in a way, also linear. If you take into account all these unconscious dynamics, the psychodynamics, the deeper lying psychoanalytic dynamics, like projections, transference, etc., then it becomes very complex, even much more complex. And if you put around the intercultural thing, then it becomes not so easy to understand why we are communicating like we are communicating, in the team, in the intercultural team, etc. So it's really a challenge to figure out, to try out, to find out. For example, if you give feedback to someone, let's give feedback. Now I want to say how I perceived you, and then you figure out all the rules, positive stuff, positive, not too much in a room, timely, etc., etc. And then the rules for taking feedback, it's a present, yes or no. We know this all. But then, if you think feedback is also a part of the others, when I give you feedback, then I give you also something from me. It's maybe full of projections. What I like in me or whatever I put into you and said, now I give you feedback. In former times we used another word for it, but I will not use it here in my company. So I said, come on, let's put it away, not too much feedback. So leadership competencies, I talked already about it. This is from research, rather interesting research by Sanger and Folkman. Although what they did is they researched 120,000 feedback, 360 feedback questionnaires to find out what is the difference between the top 10% of the leaders and the bottom line, the top lowest ones. And they found out that it's like a tent. There are 5 key aspects, like character, like interpersonal skills, leading change, driving for results, means, as I said, a good leader manages results, also tangible results, and personal competences. I wanted to show this to you because in this competency model we are working very much also on this part, as well as also change. What will happen if I change whatever system, if systems go together, merge or whatever. This is all about change as well. Okay? This Johari window, you know, the blind spot, it's also interesting. Although I said you have to be careful with feedback and you have to decide what you take and not take, but still you can find out also in these days what is my blind area, what is not known to myself. Okay? And this field, of course, you know it, others know it as well. The hidden area, of course, you don't show everything. Maybe you can also find out the blind and the unknown area. You can explore. But therefore you have to speak up and explore and maybe talk also about your feelings and thoughts, about fantasies, about ideas, maybe about things you would not dare to talk in the company. Therefore we are here. It's a very good possibility. By the way, this is by Daniel Hoffman, which is another aspect of looking of feedback, which is very interesting. Some of you know it already. It might be that you are very strong in leading or whatever, but you can be sure, if it's too much of this, think of the Turkish Prime Minister. He is a very good example, Erdogan. Till last year, summer, I liked him very much because he made the Turks be proud again. Very successful in business terms, etc. And now he really derailed. He derailed and gleised. Because his strength of being a very, very strong leader became now too much, and now he became a dictator. Okay? And his challenge is now, it's a really personal challenge as well, to go inside and to accept that the world is not like he thinks the world is. It's a big challenge. I don't think that he will manage, by the way. And the allergy is, what could be his personal allergy? Because the allergy is the opposite, the negative opposite of the qualities. What could be his allergy?
Be average.
Hmm?
To be average. Just,
To be average?
Yeah, in the crowd.
To be average. One allergy is he hates military because they locked him in for 3 months, just 3 months, but he's mad about this.
Losing control.
Losing control. This is absolutely one of his key allergies. Maybe we know each other as well, from each other as well, from us as well. So therefore, why I show this, it's not so trivial. Also, if you talk to colleagues and say, now I give you feedback, feedback can be very complex if you think in these dimensions. It's not black or white just. The last thing I want to show and then finish is the learning styles. We are here, I think we will be around 38 participants, 38, plus we as staff, 9 staff. So in total we are then 47 members of this conference. So we all are different from culture, I think we counted 12, at least 12 or 14 languages, 6 or 7 countries and nationalities. So it's an international conference, seminar. We learn differently. We have different learning styles. Maybe we have some activists around us. We want to do immediately something, try out and think and learn from it. Okay? Maybe we have people who say, come on, let's calm down. Not do anything, just reflect. It's also different. Maybe someone is a theorist, that's why I bring this input as well. Maybe you need some theory. Or maybe you want to discuss some theory. You don't have to have PowerPoint presentations. You can discuss it. To look for theory. Like Kurt Lewin said, you know the sentence. Sometimes nothing ist so gut wie eine praktische Theorie. Oder nicht ist so gut, ja. Nichts ist so praktisch wie eine gute Theorie. Nothing is so practical as a good theory. Kurt Lewin, who is one of our gurus from the 30s as well. Or you are very pragmatic and say, let's just do it and check what happens, etc. Here you can see another concept of Hersey and Blanchard, which shows short, long, so the time you need and the difficulty. The more you go into group behavior, to understand group behavior, and even to change and learn in terms of group behavior, of your group, your unit, or even your company, the more time you will need. To get some knowledge, like I show you, it's rather easy. You just listen, try to understand, write it down, then it's okay. But if you want to change your attitude, your individual behavior, even the culture, it's much more complex in terms of learning. Yes, and this is what I wanted to show to you. Maybe not too much, it's already. Any questions? What we will do is, we will have this lecture this morning. When we close it, the first part is done. So then, after following registration, we will start at 2 o'clock with the opening plenary downstairs in the Festsaal, in the big hall downstairs. It's on the left side from the bathrooms. 2 o'clock. Then we will start, so to say, a new game. It's a new format. Okay? So we will go into our roles. Now we are in different roles. Me as a lecturer and your staff being part of this audience right now. Okay? So, and then we will finish on Friday. And let's work together these days. And we will inform you about details later on in the open plenary. Okay? Thank you very much.
Yes.